Hi, I'm Penny Flowers.
Brandy Jenkins.
Hey, I want to thank you so much for coming in today. Our team, the Heather Murphy Group, I work as a buyer's agent on the team, and I'll definitely kind of get into all the functions and the benefits of having a real estate team to help you buy a home. One of the things we always do with every buyer is a buyer consultation, and that's kind of what we're doing here today. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come in and meet with me. Have you ever bought a home before?
First time.
Oh, okay, great, okay. And how are you relocating? I think you mentioned something about relocating from
Charleston.
From Charleston, okay. And is that job related?
It is.
Okay, great. So you're staying in the same field, you're just relocating to a different
I'm relocating into Gulfstream.
Oh, wonderful, okay. We do quite a bit of Gulfstream relocations. How familiar are you with Savannah? How long have you been here? I think you're renting.
I've been renting. I'm right at 8 months.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Okay, so you know Savannah. You've gotten to know the area, and do you have a feel for where you want to be?
I do. I want to be closer to work, so somewhere in the Pooler area.
Okay.
North,
all right.
Like 15 minutes from work.
Great. Okay. And is it just you, or?
No, I'm doing all the legwork, but my husband will come
okay.
up and join when I pick out the perfect house for us.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so, and how many, any kids?
We have 2.
Okay. And what are their ages?
Our daughter's 12 and our son is 10.
Okay. Well, what we like to do is, so whether it's your first house, obviously there's benefits of being your first home, or your second or third, to go through the process. Different states are different, but I wanted to go through the process of buying a home from looking at homes online, all the way through picking out the house you want to make your home, going under contract, to the closing table, getting your keys, and moving in.
Right.
And my job is, as a buyer's agent, is to represent your interests. It's not to sell you or convince you this house is the right house or not. The house sells itself. I mean, my job is to protect your interests through the process and facilitate the contract, negotiate terms, and just really set expectations. Exceed your expectations, but set expectations so that there's no surprises along the way, so that this is a very smooth transition. Especially with a spouse and 2 kids, you want this to be as smooth as possible. So you've already kind of narrowed down, I think, the parameters, and I'm going to put you in a search. We can look at a couple of properties online. But first, let me just kind of say, I, as a buyer's agent, work for you. And what that means is the Heather Murphy Group is set up as a team concept. Our team leader, Heather Murphy, she is a listing agent. And you called us on one of her listings.
I did.
That was fine. But what we feel at our team is that everybody needs to have their own representation. It's very difficult, when you see the sign in the yard, the listing agent has listed that home, they're contractually obligated to represent the interests of the seller. And they've signed a listing agreement. They're contractually obligated, they're representing the seller. So our team concept is we need dedicated buyer's agents that work separate from that in a different office that represent buyers and their interests, negotiate on their behalf. Well, obviously, we're trying to get you the best house, the best price, and negotiate all of the repairs and really protect all of your interests. And we'll kind of go into that, like with special stipulations. Things that are important, especially here in Georgia, things like flood insurance, things like a termite bond, that are important to protecting your home and your interests. I get paid from the listing side. Georgia's a cooperative state. I'm sure a lot of the states, most states work that way. But when the seller goes to list the home, they're paying a commission, and I share in that regardless of the home you choose.
Okay.
So I've got no vested interest in pushing you one way or another. It's really finding the right home for you, helping you through that process, and then facilitating contract to close. And there's a lot of moving parts, which we'll go into. There's a lot of moving parts there, but so it costs you nothing to have a dedicated buyer's agent. At the end of this, I hope you work with me. I'd love to work with you and help you find a home. Either way, get a buyer's agent that's working for you. That's key. So you mentioned, I said Pooler and Port Wentworth, and we'll kind of get into that. What I'd like to do is just kind of go through the contract to close, so that you're familiar with that, and then we'll go over. We'll kind of pull up a search and we'll look at some listings. We'll leave the property you called about is already under contract, but there's a lot in the area. There's a lot of homes that you'll be able to find. I mean, Pooler's a hot area and has a lot to offer, so we can certainly find you a home. Now, first things first, you're looking online, you're looking at properties. Have you talked to a lender about getting pre-qualified?
I have not.
Okay, all right. Now, I have an information packet. This is our buyer information packet, which I'm going to go through with you in more detail, but I'm going to send you home with this. A couple things we've already identified. The Georgia Association of Realtors wants us to give buyers specific, pieces of information, just to help you, guide you through the process. The ABCs of agency. This is understanding the broker relationship, the buyer brokerage relationship that I was just describing. And it's just a couple pages here. Our exclusive buyer brokerage agreement, that is our loyalty agreement. That if I'm your agent, you are working with me exclusively, and again, there are no fees at all for my services, and this just says I am your agent and I'm representing you. Keller Williams is representing you.
Okay, so I just call you if I see something I like.
Yes,
okay.
yes. And so we'll go through this in a little more detail. A lot of people might want to use a lender that they bank with, or something they've gone online and they've made an application. There's a benefit to using a local lender. And something I like to say up front is that the Heather Murphy Group does not take any money for somebody to be on a list. So when I say preferred lender or preferred inspector or preferred closing attorney, nobody gives us any money to be on a list. These are good lenders, just basically good people that take care of our clients and do a good job. And so the list we use are local people. They're going to be very well versed in the areas that we're working in, the items that are needed, the items of importance. And what I've found is that they are a little more accessible. I have their cell phone number. You can walk into their office. Okay. Versus using an 800 number, somebody who's 5 states over, they've got an extension, and it might be more challenging. The other thing is the larger institutions, and again, I don't like to push a lender on anybody, these are just suggestions, may not get you closed in 30 to 45 days. It might be a little bit longer, depending upon if they're working with millions and millions of clients. I've actually been told that, where the closing date had to be this time or later. So we like the accessibility. They're accountable to us because they're in front of us all the time, and they know the local area. They understand about flood insurance, where another lender may not, out of state, may not understand that. So these are our local people that we work with every day, and there's a list there, but it's important for you to get pre-qualified, because getting pre-qualified does several things for you. The first thing is that definitely gives you the peace of mind that you've already been, and it's a process there, and the lender will walk you through the process of applying for the loan. You don't have to go through the entire loan process to get pre-qualified, but just that initial pre-screening gives you peace of mind. This is how much money I can afford. The lender can also walk you through the numbers. They're going to be able to walk you through the numbers. What is this going to cost me? And there's two things about that, not just the mortgage payment, but mortgage, your interest payment, your taxes, and your insurance. So you have an idea of, if I'm buying a $200,000 house, what's that's going to cost me? I can give you a ballpark, but the lender is the professional when it comes to the money. They're the ones that are going to be able to give you some specifics. Okay. The other thing about the lender is they can help you with the closing costs. So you really understand If I'm buying a 200, again, I'm pulling a random number, $200,000 house, what do I need to have? What kind of loans are available? Meaning, do I want to go conventional? If your husband was military, is he using his VA loan? Do you want to use an FHA loan, or there's a USDA loan available? What type of loan is available, and what closing costs are attached to that? The closing costs are going to be your appraisal, your attorney's fees. Here in the state of Georgia, we use attorney's fees. We use a closing attorney to close a loan. I've bought houses in Illinois and California, they used escrow companies. So Georgia uses an attorney, and we'll get into that, what their role is. But the lender's really going to give you more specifics. How much are my closing costs going to be? Okay. So it's important to speak with a lender so you know how much you can buy. And just because you qualify for that doesn't mean you have to buy that. It doesn't mean you have to spend that. But you want to know that you're qualified. You find a house, you really love it, it's $225, and you're pre-qualified for $200. You don't want to be in a situation where you fall in love with something and you can't buy the house. So that also, pre-qualification is very important when it comes down to making an offer. Any more, particularly in the last several years, a seller is very unlikely to even consider an offer from a buyer unless they've been pre-qualified. They don't want to tie up their house for 30 to 45 days unless they know some professional lender has screened them. Yes, they're pre-qualified to buy this house.
Okay, well, I can do that this afternoon.
Okay.
I'll pick one from you.
Terrific. Yeah, I know you're off today, right? I believe so. Okay, wonderful. And these guys can get you done pretty quickly. I mean, they can definitely, any one of them would be willing to help you. But if you have any questions about any of these specific lenders, I'll definitely be willing to help you there. And I also included just some paperwork from one of the lenders. It's really a brochure on the process of kind of what the lender process is. It's a lot. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of, it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of work. But this is in most cases, this is the most important asset you'll buy. This is the most expensive purchase you'll make. So there are some moving parts to getting a loan approved, but this I found is very helpful. There's also a 30-year payment schedule here, so you can get an idea of what your payment's going to be. So we're looking online, and I'm going to set you up on a search. You've talked to the lender. You've gotten pre-qualified. You've identified some of the properties, the 3 to 5 properties, or however many that you've identified. And in our search, when we do this, you can click on favorites. Okay. There's a little heart icon for favorites. There's a light bulb for possibilities, and there's a trash can for reject. So when you're going through the search, and we'll kind of set that up, but see, you've identified some of your favorites. We go out and we look at those properties. And imagine that once we got to a short list, your husband would want to come back and do a second showing on those. Is that the way this is going to go? You're going to do the first pre-screening?
Possibly.
Okay.
If I love it, I'll just send him some photos.
Oh, okay. So he's not coming down.
Me.
That's okay. Awesome. Great. Okay. I've done a few of those where the husband bought sight unseen. Yeah. So okay. Well, terrific. So there's 3 costs to buying a home before you get to the closing table. And the first one is going to be earnest money. And earnest money comes once we're under contract. So the earnest money is, and it depends on the price point, but anywhere from as little as the minimum I've seen is $1,000 up to $3,000, depending upon the price point. Obviously, the higher the price of the home, that would go up. And really think about that in terms of like a security deposit. Now that money does not go to the seller. It goes to the escrow company of the listing agent, and it's your money. It's your money. It goes toward your down payment and your closing costs, and it gets dispersed at closing. What it really is good faith, showing the seller that we're serious about buying the home. We intend to proceed with this contract and complete this purchase.
Okay.
Because otherwise, he's tying up his house for 30 to 45 days. He's marking it under contract, and if we were to, change our minds at the last minute, he's basically left with nothing. So the intent of that is good faith, so that the seller has some security that this contract, that there's some accountability attached to this contract.
So
Now,
I do that when I pick the house?
you only do that once you're under contract.
Okay.
I don't collect checks anymore. I don't collect checks like when I'm making the offer, because I don't want to chase checks down if the offer doesn't come together or something were to happen.
Okay.
That money is due within 48 hours, within 2 days of the binding agreement date. The binding agreement date is when all paperwork has been signed, both parties have been notified, we have a deal, we're under contract.
Okay.
And that, like I said, that money is not given to the seller. It's given to the listing broker. It's held in an escrow account, dispersed at closing once we go through it. Now, there's a couple periods there that protect that earnest money. And that's part of my job as a buyer's agent, to protect obviously your interests, your investment. The first thing is the inspection period, which kind of brings me to the second cost of buying a home. The inspection period, we call it the due diligence period. And I have a blank contract, so you'll be able to look at that, take that with you today. The due diligence period, and I ask for 15 days, mostly in my contracts. New construction's a little different. Sometimes the agent will bounce me down to 10 days. In foreclosure situations, you'll see 7 or 10. 15-day due diligence period, you can change your mind for any reason and get your earnest money back.
Okay.
The intent is not to go find a better house. The intent is to schedule the inspection. We're going to have a professional inspector come out, completely look at all the components of the house, go on the roof, go in the attic, look at the AC systems, check the appliances, the electrical, the plumbing, all of that. And they give us a 36-page report. Now, they give us a summary, so some of that's pictures, they give us a summary. But from that, we're going to identify items that we want the seller to address. And when I say items, we're not talking about cosmetic stuff. We're not talking about a crack in the tile, a hairline crack in the tile, or chipped paint or something like that. We're talking about defects. The AC is not operating in its correct cooling and heating range, or the HVAC system. That's something we would want them to address. There's missing shingles on the roof, something defective. A common one, no GFCI protection in one of the outlets in the kitchen near water, something like that. Those are the items. A ceiling fan is not operable. Those are the items that we want to negotiate with the seller.
So I can request them to fix those items?
Yes.
As long as I'm within that due diligence.
That's absolutely right. And that's why I asked for 15 days, because we go under contract. We want time to get an inspector, get on an inspector's calendar. I want to be able to coordinate that with you, the buyer. I always like the buyer to be there. I go to every one of my inspections. But I like you, the buyer, because when he's walking around, you don't have to follow him around. But it's nice to have a frame of reference, so you're not just getting a report and seeing pictures going, what's he talking about? That he's shown you, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. And so from that, we're going to look through the summary. We're going to identify the items we want the seller to fix. The seller might need time to get a contractor out and get a bid before he says, yes, I'll fix these items. Or no, I'll fix 3 of the 5 items, but that's part of the negotiation process. So that's really the intent of the due diligence period. And I've run the gamut. Most times it works out very smoothly. And we come to an agreement. And, but I've had a 3-year-old home more than once where nothing was found. No defects were found. And I've had to terminate deals because of things that were found in the home. So most of the time it works out. Almost all. There's a few times, but that's the importance of having a professional inspector. That's not a closing cost. It's not required. It is just very, very strongly recommended. you know,
I
that,
think
that you have.
that's-
Oh, absolutely. And that's, like I said, so your earnest money, you're talking about $1,000 to $3,000, kind of based on the price point you gave me. The inspection is between $300 and $400.
Okay.
You can put that on your credit card. Now, like I said, the earnest money has to come from you, from your account. Like I said, it counts toward your down payment and your closing costs. That comes. You can put that on your credit card. It's $300 to $400. I think worth every penny. Worth every penny to have a professional inspector inspect the home. So the final third cost, and this really depends on which lender you use, is the appraisal. Most lenders that I've worked with are taking that cost up front, and that's a price verification of the home. The lender's not going to lend or offer a loan on a house that's worth less than what you're paying for it. And so that in a sense, I mean, that's protecting you. That they want to know, they're protecting themselves too, but they want to know they're going to send somebody out. Now, that's not an inspection. That's not a 2-hour inspection. But that's somebody who's going to go and check the property, run their comps, and make sure that the property is valued. And they're going to assess a value. Sometimes it's a little more. Sometimes it's a little less. Then we work it out with the seller, and we ask for a price reduction. But that's about $400, $400 to $450. They may take that from you up front or when you're going through the loan process. But it is a closing cost. And so that is, but it's paid prior to closing.
Okay.
So you've got your earnest money, your inspection, and your appraisal. The appraisal is not hands-on for you and I. The lender sends out an appraiser. He comes out and does the appraisal and sends us back the appraisal, sends us back his findings. We're not interacting with him the same way we are with the inspector. So we've looked online. We've gotten to, we've looked at the homes. We've sat down, gone through the contract, written an offer, and they will either counteroffer or accept our offer. And again, that's sometimes they accept the offer as written, sometimes they counteroffer. Typical price, list price to sales price in Pooler is about 97%.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. How do I know what to offer?
Well, and that's a really good question. It really depends on the inventory and the days on the market, and a lot of times, it's property specific. Another factor you want to consider. For example, if you're thinking about doing a conventional loan requires 5% down. If you want the seller to contribute toward your closing costs, which in this area, that's fairly common, not always. I mean, it really depends on the situation. If there's 5 offers on the property and they're all over list, you're not asking the seller to pay closing costs. Okay. If you wanted the seller to contribute toward your closing costs, you could ask for up to 3%. If it's a VA or an FHA loan, you can ask for more than that, but it's 3% toward your closing costs. So if you think about that, we'll use the $200,000 example. If you want the seller, if this house was on the market for 3 days, $200,000 house for 3 days, and you want to make an offer, if you wanted the seller to pay $6,000 toward your closing costs, you want to think about that in terms of that's money off of his bottom line. He's giving that $6,000 to you toward your closing costs, and it's coming off of, after his payoff, whatever equity he has in the home. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go in.
No, exactly. That's the thing. Now, if they've just done a price reduction, that's something to think about. If they just reduced the price $10,000 yesterday, coming in 10th, yeah, absolutely, and that's part of my job as a buyer's agent is to look at the days on market, look at the price reductions, but more importantly, do the research in the neighborhoods, look at the comps, and that's been a critical point, I think, going forward. And this the intent is not to scare you. The intent is really just to kind of show you how important the process is. For example, I had one in Richmond Hill where the property was priced $25,000 over anything else. It was new construction. It was a couple years old, nice house, but priced kind of high. Now, they had a couple upgrades in the house. They built a fence, but doing that research was important because the risk was this house isn't going to appraise, or very unlikely to appraise. And meanwhile, my buyer will have spent money on an inspection and an appraisal to find that out. I don't want my buyer to spend 3 weeks and $800 to be in a situation where the deal falls apart because they've overpriced the home and it won't appraise and the seller can't reduce that much money. You see?
I'm glad I found you, Penny.
I mean, but and I tend to be concerned. Like, I look at things like this because, again, that's my job, and to really to head off risk if I can. Like I said, most times it works out. These are the things that we want to look at, and you don't see a ton of people overpricing homes in Pooler. Again, it's a strong market there. I think there's 90 days of inventory right now. 97% list price to sales price. So you're going to want to make a reasonable offer. But you can't ask for things. A home warranty. Well, it's one of the things that I ask.
I would love a home warranty. I can't get my husband to do anything. So.
Well, and you know what's funny? With a home warranty, you don't want him to do anything. And our closing attorney will tell him that at the closing. He says, don't try to fix it yourself. You can decide if you want to keep this up later. But what I like for resale, and obviously, with a new construction, you're getting a 1-year bumper-to-bumper warranty with the builder, which we can go into. But with a resale, you want the peace of mind. And I ask the seller to pay for it. I believe it's up to $505. And so I write in the special stipulations: the seller shall provide a 1-year home warranty, a 1-year home warranty in the amount of $505 at no cost to the purchaser. And what that does, and here's a brochure I'm going to leave you with, and it tells you what it covers, but it's the internal components on the home. This isn't going to warranty the roof or the siding on the outside. These are your appliances, some components of the HVAC, the plumbing, or some of the electrical, things like that. You call the home warranty. It's a $75 trade, call fee, kind of like a copay at the doctor, and they come out and fix the problem. 2 years ago, had a buyer AC went out 3 days after closing. So
that's my fear.
They didn't, and they didn't replace the whole thing, but they covered half of it, which was significant. I mean,
I've heard in Georgia, your HVAC system is key when buying.
Yes. So that's something that I ask the seller to pay for. Another thing that's important is the termite bond. And, obviously, and you're from Charleston, so you might be more familiar than some that aren't. I don't even want to say this. They say it's not if, it's when. Mm-hmm. People in Nebraska have no idea about termite bond. They don't. I mean, that's not really anything they have to worry about. Here it is, and what I always want the seller to cover is a repair and retreat bond, a repair and retreat termite bond. And why that's important is that what it is, they've gone out. Are you familiar with the termite bonds? Or
I am. It's pretty popular.
Okay.
My dad has drilled it into me.
Okay. So. Absolutely. So you want repair and retreat because
so they fix it if there's something wrong. Okay.
Yeah, they don't just come in and kill the bugs
and
leave a giant hole. Yeah, exactly. They're coming in and they're repairing the damage. So I would say more often than not, sellers have that in place on their homes. That is something I don't leave to chance. I write in my special stips. Seller shall provide a repair and retreat termite bond or transfer the existing repair and retreat termite bond at no cost to the purchaser. Because they'll transfer that to you at no cost, but it's something I don't leave to chance. And another special stipulation is going to be flood insurance. I will look and determine whether or not, I'll look for myself. I'm not going to rely on just the seller's disclosure. Look for myself and determine if you're in a flood zone.
Yeah, I'd like to look at homes only in flood zones.
All right. Well, then we will do that. And Pooler, you have, that's going to be easier to do than other areas.
Yeah.
But again, if it were, because you got to put that into perspective too. I sold a home recently where it was in a flood zone where we didn't think it previously was. It was $400 a year. So that. In that case, they wanted to buy the home. They didn't want to not buy the home for that reason. However, we wanted an updated flood elevation certificate at no cost to the purchaser. They pull out a flood elevation certificate from 1989.
It's not.
We're spending $300 to get a new flood cert to get flood insurance, and we don't want that. However, you've mentioned you don't want flood insurance, so we'll focus on that primarily first.
I prefer to, let's start with the no flood
Okay.
just in case.
All right. But those are some of the things that I write in special stipulations. And then any other special stipulations are going to be like, do you want the refrigerator to convey with the property? Do you want the washer and dryer? Sometimes they do include those things, sometimes they don't. The other appliances always convey, almost always convey. I should say, I've never seen it not. The stove, the microwave, if there is one built in, the dishwasher, those items convey. The refrigerator, not always, but we can ask for that.
Okay.
So those are there's 4 components to the contract, and I do have a copy of just the contract here. Just so you can kind of look at that. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I may just send that to my husband to look at now.
Well, the who, what, when, where is on the first page. And that's going to be your price. Are we asking for any closing costs? When are we closing? This is something. You get your, I always check the box at closing. I want you to get your keys and be able to move in. I've seen military families with a moving truck outside on the sidewalk waiting for them to get back from the closing. I don't want the seller in the house, if at all possible. I mean, it works sometimes. As a buyer's agent, I work for you. I don't want the seller in the house days after closing. The holder of the earnest money, that's typically whoever the listing agent is, unless they instruct us otherwise, who our closing attorney is. And we can make some recommendations. And how much earnest money are we offering? The due diligence period, who the listing broker is, the time limit of the offer. I don't give people a lot of time. This is a very active market that we're in. Then I'm not giving them 3 days to look at our offer so that other multiple offers can come in. I give them 24 hours. Okay. If I offer it at night, I might give them 36 hours. I want them to deal with us. I don't want there to be potential competition. The rest of the contractor disclosures, which I will go over with you when we're signing the paperwork so that you understand. I'm very conscientious and concerned. I want you to understand everything that you're signing. One of the closing attorneys I use, it's one of the reasons I like him, because he explains what they're signing. It's not just here. This is important. Refreshing. This is important, and I want you to understand everything you're signing. So just kind of go through this real quick. Here is there's typically 4 exhibits. There might be more, but typically there's 4 exhibits that accompany most resales. You're going to have your legal description, which I'm going to pull from the state website. That's for the closing attorney. When he goes to do title work, run a title examination, make sure there's not a giant IRS tax lien attached to the property, things like that. I've had 2. We closed them both, but the seller had to take care of that before we did. The legal description, they don't want me filling out. They're not using just the physical address. They don't want me filling out lot numbers. We want to know that they're doing the work on the right house. So you just initial that. It's just a little 1 page, but it's from the state website. The seller's disclosure. You're going to have that opportunity to review the seller's disclosure before we write an offer. I'm going to get that information. When you get to your short list, I'm going to get that information. And that's a 6-page document where the seller says, how long, when was the house built? How long have you lived in the house? Or is the house vacant? How long? How old's the roof? Is there a termite bond on the property? What stays with the property? Are they taking the fridge? Or one that I have under contract now, they elected to take one of the chandeliers in the bathroom. They had to identify that. Things like that. And have there been any insurance claims on the property? Yes, a tree fell in the back. The things that they want to disclose to us, and we're going to sign that. And that's going to be an exhibit. That's part of the contract. Another one is the community disclosure. In Pooler's newer, a lot more of their properties are in a community, an HOA community. And they're going to have covenants and restrictions, and they're going to have dues. And traditionally, I see $400 to $800 a year, typically in HOA or in HOA dues. And the The community association is basically going to describe who is the management company, how much are the HOA dues, how, when and what installments, what does this cover? Is there a pool, tennis courts, clubhouse? Is it common area maintenance, common area insurance, things like that?
That would be nice.
Another, and you initial that, and that's something that the seller provides us. Another important thing there is and they put this in the contract this year, which I thought was great, that any fees to transfer ownership, if they're not disclosed there, it is the seller's responsibility at closing to pay it. Meaning a lot of HOAs have charged, in one case, $500 to transfer ownership. We want to know that up front. We want to know what those costs are. And it's nice that they've kind of put that in there. It is the seller's responsibility, because a lot of times I can call an HOA, that doesn't mean they'll talk to me.
Right.
The seller is the owner of the property. It's his responsibility to find out what are the costs associated with this HOA and to get them right and to disclose them to us. So the community disclosure will initial that. And then finally is your loan exhibit. Your loan exhibit's going to depend on what type of loan. You've got a conventional loan exhibit, VA, FHA. It really depends on what type of loan. But the loan exhibit protects you in case you didn't get the loan, in case you were denied for any reason. And I typically don't see a ton of denials in the cases that I've seen. It's been something that's come up after the fact. It's very rare. But it's a nice protection. And the financing contingency period is the second period that protects your earnest money. Now that's a little longer. When you think it takes about 30 to 45 days to close, from contract to close, I'm going to ask for 35 days for the financing contingency period. And the financing contingency period, meaning if you were denied the loan and we offered the loan denial letter within that time frame, you would get your earnest money returned to you. And that doesn't mean you have to be done in 35 days, but we need to know from the lender whether or not you're approved and that you can proceed.
And will my lender speak with you
Yes.
as well? Okay.
Yes. But they're going to speak with you more so. They'll be more involved with you as far as your private information and your documents, your W-2s, your tax documents, and everything, bank statements, whatever they need for you and your husband to complete this loan. But yes, they will be talking to me about where the status of the appraisal and the status of the loan. They're in underwriting, or they've cleared underwriting with a couple conditions and we're clearing that up, or we need the termite letter, things like that. So it really depends. And yes, I will be working with the lender on that.
Great.
I'm with you every step. I go to inspection. Another thing we'll do is we will do a final walkthrough of the property the day of closing or the day before at the latest. And the reason that's important is the property has to be in the position, in the condition that we found it in. The property has to be, all the repairs need to be made, and the property has to be meaning they didn't punch a big hole in the wall when they moved their stuff out. A vacant house didn't all of a sudden spring a sink leak and there's water all over the floor. We want to make sure that the house is in the correct condition. We do that close to closing as possible. And the reason is because I don't want to do it a week before, because then what if something were to happen? What if some damage were to happen? I want to know pretty close to closing that the house is in the condition we bought it in, and that all the contract items are met. If it's a lengthy repair list, which hopefully it will not be, but if it's a lengthy repair list, we may have that checked, and you can have a professional, you can have the inspector come back out and do for a fee. I mean, there's a fee.
He'll check that everything I want to fix is fixed.
And that's something that I'll guide you on, or that I said that we can work together. At the end of the day, it's for your peace of mind. It's what you're comfortable with. You get people from all walks of life. You get people who know how to fix stuff themselves and they don't need that. You get me, I'm not so much. I need move-in ready because I'm not handy at all. So, it depends on what it is. If it's a couple minor, you may not have a professional inspector come back out. If it were 10 things and some of them were electrical and some of them were on the roof, you might want to have somebody come out and say, hey, I want to make sure that these things were done. So that's something we'll determine when it gets closer. Once the inspection's been done, the repair's been negotiated, we can decide on that.
Sounds great.
But do you have any questions? I know this is a lot of information. I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you.
It is. I don't believe so. I'm just excited. I'm ready to start getting the properties and looking at them. I'm excited to work with you. It seems
Thank you.
Like
Thank
A
you.
to Z is taken care of.
Well, we definitely want that, and we want you to have the best experience with our team as possible, because it's an exciting process. It can be a stressful process. If we can take a lot of these things out of the mix and make it a smooth process, I mean, that's our goal, is to exceed your expectations so that you would recommend us to anyone. But let's see. I'm going to leave you with this for you to look over. And I am going to very quickly, and I've got your information here, but there is, you know what? Tell me a little bit. You mentioned we talked on the phone, and we mentioned. Tell me a little bit about your must-haves and your wants.
I think for us, we really want to be within about 20 miles of work.
Okay.
I'll be at Gulfstream, and he's going to be doing shipping, so he'll be at the ports. So kind of that Pooler, Port Wentworth area, I think would work out great for us.
Okay.
I have not spoken to a lender yet, but ideally, I would like to be in the 250 price range.
Okay.
And with the 2 kids, I'd like to have 4 bedrooms.
Okay.
And with at least 2.5 bathrooms, I think. So we have a guest area as well. It would be nice to have a fenced-in yard. We can add that later, but if it's there, that would be great to go ahead and have a fenced-in yard.
Okay.
And ideally, it would be really nice not to have neighbors really close to us, but I do like the subdivision aspect.
If you see a sign or you're curious about a property, you can call me at any time or text me at any time, and I will give you the information on it. I'm also available to go with you as far as new construction, pretty much anything. And just about everything that's available, even with the exception of a for sale by owner. If you do see a for sale by owner you're curious about, again, I will contact the for sale by owner, and I just closed one yesterday. So I'm happy to work with them as well. But I said, give me their number, and I'll contact them, and I can facilitate that. So, but this will help you get started. And when you have a chance, I said, talk to your lender today. You let me know what days I'm available. I'm available evenings. I'm available weekends during the day. I know you work at Gulfstream, but I'll work around your schedule.
Sounds great. I'm excited.
Okay. All right. If you have any other questions so far or anything?
I don't think so, but I'm sure when I get in my car I will. So can I email?
Call me or text me.
Okay.
Call me or text me or email me. It doesn't. I'm definitely happy to answer any questions or about the house or the process or anything. I don't expect you to remember everything. I do like people to kind of know what the process is.
I'll go back through and look through.
Okay.
This, and then I will let you know what lender I call.
Okay.
And hopefully by this weekend we can see a few properties.
Wonderful. All right. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you,
All right. I look forward to working with you.
All right.